welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how do we actually know when it's time to leave a relationship, and also how do we actually move beyond a breakup? Both of these things are really challenging experiences for so many of us. And by the way, they're experiences that I have been in my own life. I'm going to share some of that with you today in hopes that it supports you to feel less alone in your journey too. So when we find ourselves in a relationship where things are chronically not working for us, it's really common that for many of us, we'll find it feels nearly impossible for us to leave that situation. You may have friends in your life saying things like, you deserve so much better. You might think that to yourself. And yet, no matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to get out of this dynamic that I'm in. So if that's occurring, that is a clue or an indicator that we have younger parts that are showing up in the relational dynamic. We have lots of episodes on parts that I really invite you to check out because it's going to equip you with the tools necessary to begin greeting those parts. But essentially what is happening is a younger part of me is really predominantly showing up in the relationship more than my adult self. So think about this for a moment. If I have, a 6-year-old version of me that's predominantly showing up in my adult relationship, for that 6-year-old, if they don't have adult me as their anchor point and as their parent, then they're really looking for my partner to be that safety, that adult, and that parent for them. And so what this younger part's going to say is the other option is to be all alone in the world. And I'm 6 years old, and that is not going to be safe for me. So these younger parts begin to do lots of bargaining in terms of the relational dynamic. And what we'll find ourselves doing, and it's really the part doing this, is we minimize what isn't working for us. And we say, well, it's not that big of a deal. I don't really need them to do that thing. Or we avoid it. So there's dynamics that are occurring where we're not getting our needs met and we're not, being seen or feeling heard or whatever it is, but we avoid addressing it because that part of us is saying, I don't want to have the consequence of them going away. And so this is a really common thing that so many of us find ourselves experiencing in our relationships. And another way that this can show up is that the younger part looks to our partner and sees the potential or the possibility of their healing. Because by the way, everybody has potential. There's possibility for everybody in their healing, but we're really focused on the potential alone. We're not looking at what action is being taken to really come into that potential, meaning what change is actually occurring. And so if we are too focused on those things, what occurs is we're not actually being with what is in the dynamic. And that's something that's really common too. And by the way, I want to name, it's a beautiful thing to see the possibility and potential in someone. So I don't want to negate that, but we also have to be with what is that person doing to actually step into that potential. And if we're finding ourselves struggling relationally, that might be happening, by the way, on both sides of the court. That might be happening with us and it might be happening with our partner as well. And it can be a really overwhelming thing to actually process and be with what is inside of the relational container. So let's say, I'm going to make something up, 20% of the time, your partner is embodied in their adult self in the relationship. And when that version of them is present, they meet so many of your needs. They really are the ideal partner for you. But the thing is, 80% of the time, they have protective parts showing up and things getting in the way of them being their true self or their adult self. And what we can tend to do is we really grasp onto that 20% and we don't focus on the 80% and what's actually happening or occurring. So for all of these reasons, it can be really challenging for us to leave something that isn't working for us. And we can go round and round and round for, a really long time, even years in that process of not being able to get our needs met and the resentment that builds because of that, but we can't seem to mobilize and do anything about it. And again, the core of that is that we have younger parts who are running the show in our lives. And if I am predominantly in my 5-year-old self, 10-year-old self, 13-year-old self inside of the relational container, that part will never feel safe to leave until they have adult me present, who is saying, hey, leaving doesn't mean you're going to be alone, all alone in the world like you were in your childhood. Leaving means you're coming with me and I am home for you. And when that transpires, then we're actually able to make the right choice for ourselves. I can tell you, for myself, I was married for 10 years we were together for 13 years. And by the way, I want to name that was a really beautiful container for my healing to happen inside of. I met my ex-husband when I was 22 years old. But I reached a point in my healing journey where it wasn't working for me anymore because now I actually had needs. I wanted to take up space. Things weren't okay that I thought were okay. And I was butting up against this, everything that I just named. I was butting up against all of it. The reason that I couldn't actually leave was because I was predominantly in my younger parts. And I would complain. I felt a lot of the time, I felt like I was dying inside. I wasn't getting my needs met. I was angry. I was resentful. And yet I couldn't go. And it was only after embodying this work and becoming the adult to that younger self or the younger selves, there's many younger parts, that finally those parts said, oh, wow, there's someone else here. It's not just me. And I was able to take the hand of those parts. And together, my ex-husband and I were able to say, because it was really a joint decision, that it's time for this chapter of relating in this way to come to a close. And I felt safe enough to do it. But we will not feel safe to do that until we have finally greeted our parts. And I went around and round in that process for many years, unable to leave. And I know there's people listening who you have people in your life who tell you like, you deserve better, you should just go. And that can actually make us feel worse in a lot of ways. Or we can start to feel really isolated. Like I don't even want to tell them what's going on because I know what they're going to say. And then I'm going to feel shame that I can't actually do anything about leaving. So I just want you to know if any of that sounds familiar to you, likely what is occurring is that young part is desperately in need of you. Another reason why so many of us can find it challenging to leave relationships that aren't for us is because if we're not anchored in regulation in our nervous system, that means that our nervous system is going to anticipate a dangerous future. So whenever you're dysregulated and you ask yourself, what's the future going to look like? It will not be a positive answer. So if we're finding ourselves chronically dysregulated, then when I think about leaving that relationship, I am not going to see a positive future. I'm going to look to the future and think things like, I'm never going to find anyone better. And maybe I won't find anyone at all. I'm at this age, who's even going to want to be with me? And we go down this road of lack and lacking possibility, and that things are going to be even worse for us. And so what's really important here is we have to anchor ourselves in regulation. The more that you regulate your nervous system, and from that place, anchored in adult you, and safety. When you look to the future, it will no longer be a negative outlook. It will be coming from a place of positivity. So from regulation, there is a knowingness that no matter what, everything is going to be okay. And also, there is an okayness with not knowing the outcome. And in fact, not only an okayness, but an excitement even. And I know you're listening, you're like, an excitement about not knowing how things are going to turn out. Yeah, really. That's what makes life, beautiful, that I don't have all the answers. I don't know how it's going to unfold. But when I'm anchored in adult me, I know that no matter what, it's going to be okay. And the more that you can also anchor into a spiritual practice of any kind, by the way, a spiritual practice is going out in nature, like connecting with animals, connecting with trees, dancing, being in the ocean, connecting to spirit, source, God, whatever it is for you, connecting to that and your truest self or your soul, and anchoring into what are the desires of my truest self? What are the desires of my soul? And I deeply believe the desires of our soul are meant for us. They never tend to look how we plan. They always tend to look exactly how they're supposed to. and better than we could ever have planned. So it's really anchoring in that, from regulation, there's possibility. So if I look out into my future from this place, I know that I exist. And if I exist and I'm doing this work in my life, well, there has to be somebody else that exists who's doing this work in their life. I don't know them yet, but they have to exist because I exist. And it starts to open up possibility for us. And that makes it more tolerable for us to step into the unknown and leave something that isn't serving us. And another thing that I want to name is a lot of us find it really challenging to be with what is. Like, what's actually happening here and what's unfolding in front of me? And so let's say I'm with a partner whom, and like my marriage, a partner who in many ways loved me very much and was trying his best, because I think everybody is trying their very best. And that best at some point was not enough for me. It wasn't meeting my needs. I needed more. I needed him to go deeper into his work and being with the truth that I cannot make anyone else do that. There is no amount of, putting the book on their nightstand, thinking they're going to read the book, or asking them to do this work with you or whatever. None of that can ever make anyone do their work. They have to want to do it for themselves. So once we are anchored in regulation in our adult self, then I can actually look at this through the lens of what is and accept what is. And when I'm able to do that, it makes room for what can be and what needs to be in order for myself to feel fully alive. And by the way, if you reach a juncture like I just named in a relationship where both parties aren't wanting to do the work, you're not a match for each other anymore. Meaning it's not just that they're not a match for you, you're not a match for them because you're holding up mirrors that they don't want to look at. And so what they really need is a person at that juncture in their life, if that's what they're choosing, they need a person who's not going to hold up those same mirrors because they're not willing to look at them. So it's never a failure if a relationship that you're in is ending, if you were able to learn more about yourself inside of it and grow inside of it. That is a success. In our culture, we look at endings as if it's a failure. And there's like this automatic response when you encounter someone who's been married for a decade or 2 decades or 5 decades or whatever. And we just say, oh, that's amazing. Congratulations. But we don't actually inquire what's been going on inside of that relationship. Are you staying in that relationship because your younger parts don't feel safe to leave? That is most certainly not a success. So we have to change our orientation to what does it mean to be successful in a relationship? And what it means is I am learning more about me. I am willing to look at the parts of me that are still wounded in the past and that need my support. And this is a beautiful container that is bringing those things to light. And I am not missing the opportunity to grow from it. And if something ends and that is what occurred, what an incredible success that is. If something continues on for 5 decades, what an incredible success that is. So I want us to change the way we view success in a relationship, and what it should really be about is this container supporting me to become more of who I am, to show myself more fully to another and to the world? And if that has happened, what a brilliant and beautiful success that is. Something that I get asked all of the time is, how do I know if this relationship is right for me? And we can go round and round and round in that questioning and inquiry. I did that inside of my marriage for a really long time. And I think of this like having 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I'm sort of like invested in the relationship, but then a part of me is like, well, I don't know, maybe this isn't right for me, but maybe it is right for me. And maybe there's nothing better out there. And maybe I'm just getting in the way and I need to step into this, but maybe it's totally wrong. If you are finding yourself in that 1 foot in, 1 foot out, this is likely a protective part of you showing up. So we all have parts. Again, listen to the episode on parts that we have. We have a couple of them, but a protective part. Protective parts are meant to keep your vulnerable parts from ever feeling the pain they felt in the past. So I had a protective part that was doing a really good job to keep my vulnerable part from ever feeling the depths of abandonment that they felt in the past, and also from ever feeling trapped in something that was dangerous. because that's what I experienced in my childhood home because of the abuse I experienced. I was trapped in that. So my protector was like, I don't ever want us to get fully invested in a relational experience here, because what if we feel the devastation of being abandoned like we did as a child? To that vulnerable part, that would have felt like annihilation. The same goes with feeling trapped. I don't want that to happen. So my protective part would keep me up in my mind, thinking about how, is this right? Is this not right? Is this right? Is it not right? What I can tell you is, if you have a part doing that, that is a surefire way for something to never work. The only way that we can know if something is going to work or not is by placing both feet inside of the relationship. But here's what won't work. If I ask the protective part to step fully into the relationship, the protective part's like, absolutely not. I don't think this is safe, because historically speaking, relationships weren't entirely safe. The only one that can step 2 feet into the relationship is our adult selves. And the only way to actually know if something is right for you is to fully step into that relational container. And by the way, this doesn't mean you have to commit to 2 years inside the relational container with both feet in. Literally, you can start with 1 day at a time. That's what I did. For my protective parts, that's what felt tolerable for them. And I started with saying to myself, okay, today, adult me is choosing this fully and completely. And I know from adult me, I can leave at any time that is right for me to leave. And it is safe for me to do that. And it is safe for my right action to evoke pain or challenge in another person, meaning heartbreak. And if we have parts that, have experiences in the past where hurting another person would have meant harm to us, or hurting their feelings would have meant harm to us, or that we were made to feel like we were bad, we won't be able to tolerate that. But from my adult self, I know that if this relationship isn't right for me, it's not right for them either. And that my job isn't to keep someone from feeling their own pain. There's learning in that if this is actually coming from my truth. So the path towards figuring out if a relationship is right for us is first and foremost beginning to anchor in our adult selves. This is your truest self or your highest self. And what I do when I'm working with clients or inside of any program is I have them anchor into one moment in time where they felt capable and able. This could be a spiritual moment you had, a moment in nature, a moment in awe, a moment where you're feeling in flow or you're embodying your purpose, your calling, maybe when you're parenting your children, taking care of your animal, or comforting another. And I just want to very quickly have you embody this for a moment so you can feel what it's like. So think of one moment in time where that version of you was present. And what I want you to do is I want you to fully bring it to life. So as long as you're not driving a vehicle or flying a plane or whatever you're doing, as long as you're in a safe space, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think back to that experience and bring it to life. Notice the things that you hear when you were there. Notice what the air smells like, the sounds that you hear, what you see. And as this experience comes to life in your body, notice what sensations arise. Maybe things like feeling present and still, open, expanded, warm. You'll also notice your physiology begins to grow, so we're not hiding. You might notice your chest comes up, your posture becomes better, your body feels exposed safely. You may notice that you feel anchored in your body. There's a stillness inside. So just notice the sensations and then notice the feelings that arise. We might feel capable, able, curious, present, loving, open. So just notice the feelings that arise. And then what I want you to notice from this place, what thoughts are present? What thoughts come to you? What is true about you? What is true about your life? What is true about your purpose? And if you are currently in a relationship, I want you to ask yourself, what is true about this relationship? And what is true about my partner? and just notice what arises for you. If you are actually anchored in regulation right now, the thoughts that are going to come to you are thoughts based in your adult self. And by the way, what I want to name is, from regulation, it isn't that everything's just groovy and awesome. Groovy, isn't that funny? That word just came right out of nowhere. It's not that everything, I'm going to start using that. I'm going to use it later today when I'm with my partner. Anyway, it's not that everything's awesome, right? It's that I am anchored in presence around it, and I know that everything's going to be okay. And my perception of what's occurring is actually based in today. So it might be this. In so many ways, my partner is meeting my needs. They are so tender with me. That's something I always wanted with a partner. They're so tender with me. They're playful and fun. And then I might also have a thought like, I wish they had more time for me. That's something that doesn't feel like I'm fully getting that need met. But as you can hear, this is coming from a steadiness, meaning a knowingness that I'm okay. And this adult us is the compass for what is actually true for adult me inside of the relationship. So often, people are making choices in their relationship from younger versions of themselves that is not actually totally informed by what's happening presently. So if you want to know what the right decision is inside of your relationship or any decision, we must anchor into this adult us. So from this adult self, now that we've anchored in it, I want you to ask yourself, what is true about my partner that is really filling me up? What is true about my partner that is meeting my needs? What do I admire about my partner? What things about them do I deeply respect and love? So just go through that for a second. And by the way, I'm going to go through this quickly. I want you to come back to this exercise regularly. So feel into that for a moment and not just thinking the thoughts, but feel it in your body. What is actually true? And notice what it feels like to experience them. And by the way, for a lot of us, we're able to feel into this goodness more when we're not with them. Because when we're with them, we might have protective parts that show up that are afraid of us connecting deeply and intimately. Our work is to build our capacity for that, but it can be easier at first when we're alone. So just feel into what's true. And then I would invite you to write those things down. Those are things that we're going to want to continue to meditate on and marinate in, meaning feeling back into again and again and again. Now, from adult you, I want you to ask yourself, what traits does my partner have that are challenging for me? Or what parts of their unresolved trauma or their stuff is showing up in our relationship that is hard for me? That might be things like, I want deeper intimacy from them, meaning emotional intimacy. And I wish they'd talk to me more about what was going on inside of them, or were able to hold more space for me. Or when we have an argument, I really wish they didn't shut down so much and they were able to come back more quickly. And what can be really helpful as well is to delineate between what are the things that maybe annoy me or bother me, because by the way, there is no perfect person out there. So anyone you're with, there's going to be things about them that maybe bother you. They leave your car messy. They're always 5 minutes late, whatever those things might be. And then I want you to get clear on what are the things that really are not working and are not meeting primary needs that I have. What are those things? So we want to delineate or separate them and really feel into your embodied truth around both as adult you. Here is the thing. As I named, of course, we all know this, right? There is no perfect person. And so what we really have to do is be practical when it comes to deciding on a partner, specifically a life partner. And I know I'm taking away maybe the fairy tale romance of long-term partnership, but some of the most important things in that are that they are safe to us, that they have regulation within their own nervous system and are consistently working on that, and that they are willing and able to do the work with us. And as we both continue on in becoming a greater version of ourselves and meeting each other's needs in the process. So the truth is, there is no perfect person, right? And we all, of course, know that. But when we're in a relationship, we might have protective parts of us that try to get us out of a relationship that we're currently in because it's afraid, to be fully loved. It's afraid to be abandoned. And that protective part can fantasize about the perfect person. And that is a great way to get us out of something that might actually be really good for us. So this exercise of anchoring an adult me, what are the good things about my partner? Feeling into them. How are they meeting my needs? And what are they doing that perhaps I never got as a child? That's so incredible when our partner is able to help us heal the past and the present. So feeling into that. Then again, we want to delineate between what are the things about them that, bother me. They're kind of annoying. And then because by the way, I have things about me that are incredibly annoying. If my partner was listening to this, he would probably say, yes, there's many of them. That's really different than the things that are primary needs that we have that they aren't meeting. So I want to differentiate between those two. And once I have a lot of clarity on that, I want to look at, okay, the primary needs that I have that they aren't meeting, are they open and willing to begin doing that with me? And if my partner is not open and willing to doing that with me, then the truth of the matter is that the only way that relationship can work is if I deprive myself of my needs. And that is going to lead to things like chronic illness, resentment, and either my system breaking down or the relationship eventually having to end. So anchoring an adult us is really important. That is our compass. The other thing that I want us to do, once I've anchored an adult me, I want you to ask yourself, what other versions of myself, younger parts, are showing up in this relationship? If I have younger parts that are taking the steering wheel and they're predominantly showing up and they don't yet have me parenting them, they are going to look for our partner to be the perfect parent that they never had. And here's the thing, your partner cannot be a perfect parent. We cannot be a perfect parent. They don't exist. But what that does is, if that younger part is showing up, they are can tend to be quite hypercritical of our partner, meaning it's never quite enough. So that younger part shows up and their goal is, I don't want to ever experience the pain I experienced in the past. So it's almost like they have this very soft baby skin. And so our imperfect partner, as they go about their day and they're being them, they're going to do things that are going to poke at that younger part. And then that younger part is going to re-experience the pain that they felt in the past. So what that part does is, or protective part does, is they show up and they try to control our partner. And we're kind of always on them. You need to be different. Or if you could just do this more, if you could do this less, and and constantly needing them to be different or needing them to rescue our part. And other times we have younger parts whom are just so deeply afraid of being abandoned, we need our partner to give us constant reassurance, and it will never be enough. So if you notice that you're in a dynamic where it never seems to be enough, no matter what your partner does, that's a clue that young you is showing up. So again, what I want you to make a regular practice of is anchoring an adult you, and then marinate in what is true about my partner, what are the good things that I experience with them, the traits that they have that I love so much, and then what are the things that bother me, and what are the things that I absolutely need that currently aren't being met. The more that I do this, the more I have clarity on what I need in this relationship. And then our job as adult us is to present that to our partner and say, hey, here are some non-negotiables that I need. Are you willing to do this work with me? Lastly, what I want to say is we must day by day step 2 feet into the relationship. And I want you to comfort the parts that are afraid to be trapped, they're afraid to hurt your partner, and let them know from adult me, I can leave at any point that this isn't right. And so literally you could take that hour by hour, you could take it day by day. And the more that we do this, the more we get clarity on if a relationship is actually right for us. And then once you get to a place of saying wow, it really is. I'm so glad I didn't let these parts sabotage this. You'll step into a new iteration of love that you never thought was possible. And healing in the past happens in the present. And it's such a beautiful thing. These rocky roads in a relationship are absolutely normal to get to. The other option that will happen is you'll get to clarity on my partner who I love very much is not wanting or able to do the work that I need in order for me to be fulfilled in this relationship and get my needs met. And that is okay. And from our adult selves, we have the capacity to be with that experience and process the grief of something ending. Many of us have a lot of trauma around endings because endings meant being abandoned, meant being harmed. They weren't processed properly. And so they can be really terrifying experiences. But from our adult selves, I can be with the both and of this, that this is right, that this is ending, and there's grief around it. When my ex-husband and I ended our marriage after, 13 years, like I said, it was the absolute right thing. I remember when I moved into my house, my own house, I sat down and I looked around and I was just like so excited to be in this place, in this new chapter of my life. And I loved the house that I chose. And it wasn't just the physical house. It was this representation of this new beginning, that I am safe with me. And then, of course, at the same time, there were little things that I missed, like the silly little jokes that you have that you've been saying for a very long time or whatever it is. That's all so normal and to be expected. And so to be able to be with the both and of this is absolutely right. And I am so glad this is happening. And also, I no longer have that person as my person. And the more that we build our capacity to be in our adult selves, the more we're able to navigate that process with ease. So now I want to talk about why it can be so challenging for us to let go of a relationship that has ended. We could be in that experience of not being able to let go years after something has ended. So if you're really struggling in that, number one, this is an indicator that you have younger parts showing up in your body and in your life that have not yet relinquished that deep desire to find the home or the parent in that partner, that our partner, by the way, could never be. So if this is happening to you, the most important thing is to anchor in our adult selves. I showed you how to do that. And if you want to do that more deeply, come join one of my programs where I go deep into parts work. But it is imperative that we do that. And then we become the thing and the parent that our younger part is still looking for in that partner that's no longer there. It's also a clue that a younger part is showing up if we find that we're putting that person on a pedestal and also looking at the relationship in them with rose-colored glasses. That's all a younger part that is, again, projecting the perfect parent on them and saying, get them back because I'm not okay by myself. And being by myself is reminding me of the wounding that I experienced in the past. So parts work is absolutely imperative. When we do that, the younger parts actually turn towards us instead of that other person. And then we're actually able to relinquish the past and move on and let go. Another reason why it can be so hard to move on is because if we had younger parts that were predominantly showing up in that relationship, and then we get out of the relationship and we realize that, you might not know that they're parts. You might just think to yourself, like, I can't believe I did those things. And why was I sabotaging and all of that? We can beat ourselves up over it and have a lot of self-hatred, which then leads to regret. Why did I do that? If I could have just done it different, if I could have just done this, if I just didn't do this, if these parts just didn't show up. And the truth is, you're doing the very best with the tools that you had. Not every relationship is supposed to make it long-term. Every relationship, though, is supposed to be the foundation or the place where healing happens for us and where changes happen for us. So we want to really change our orientation to how we looked at that relationship. What did it teach me? And maybe what it taught me was, oh my goodness, I have these parts that show up a lot. And I need to tend those parts because if I don't, the protective parts are going to continue to do this in relationships. And if that happens, oh my goodness, what a gift that relationship was for you. What an incredible gift. That is not a failure, or it certainly isn't anything to regret. And really trusting, again, that the desires of your soul are for you. There is not one person out there in this great big world that is your person alone. If we're doing that, by the way, that's putting someone on a pedestal, and essentially you're making that person God, right? Like there's this only one person that could ever fulfill me in my life. It's just not true. And when we're choosing a partner, we've been sold this lie that love is supposed to be like some fairy tale. And true real love is grounded in chemistry and excitement and romance, all of those things. But it's also grounded in being with someone who deeply sees us and wants to see more of themselves, which allows them to see more of us, and is willing to go to places that scares them, just as we are willing to go to places that scare us. And really those things, and of course much more, are the foundation of what makes a relationship right and healthy. So another reason we may struggle to move on from a relationship is because we don't know how to process grief. I say this a lot, but we live in a world and a culture that really doesn't know how to be with this experience. So we brush it under the rug, we push it away because it feels too intolerable or overwhelming for us. A part of processing grief around a relationship ending is being with this experience in our bodies that I have given myself to this person. And maybe I allowed this person to see parts of me that I never let another person see, or not to that degree. And there's such a sacredness in that relationship. So even if it wasn't right for me, even if, let's say, 80% of the time things weren't good, 20% they were. And we were deeply connected in those experiences. And energetically, it can literally feel like I gave this part of me to them. And now that part of me is out in the world. And what's really important to anchor into the truth of the matter is that part still resides inside of you. And by the way, that 20% of goodness in the relationship, that still resides in you. They are imprinted on you forever. Every good experience that we have imprints on our hearts and our soul, and that can never be lost. So it's really feeling into the embodiment of that truth. So another experience of processing grief is being with the emptiness or the void that they filled, meaning the place in my life that they filled up. And we can tend to avoid being with that space because it's so overwhelming. It is literally like a death. They are no longer here. I'm not hearing their laugh. I'm not going on walks with them. I'm not laying in bed holding their hand or looking into their eyes. It's no longer here. What's really important is that in processing grief, we have to anchor in our adult selves. That's the only one that has the capacity to fully be with and process the grief. And something that I say often is that the size of our grief always matches the size of the love. And so when I anchor in adult me, and I really feel into the grief that is here, meaning the loss of what was. Also, by the way, the loss of what could have been. Oh, it's tragic, right? When I'm with a person who there's so much potential for us, but our parts just got in the way. And our parts need more of us in order for the relationship to have worked. And at this moment in time, in this universe, that wasn't possible. And so allowing ourselves to be with that great grief that always matches the size of the great love. Now, again, if you're in a younger part, that grief is going to feel insurmountable and unsurvivable because the young part is saying, if I'm all alone in the world, I'm not going to be okay. And it is very, very different from our adult selves. And another thing about processing grief is, when we are in a relationship, we are actually attaching to that person. So hyper independence or not relying or attaching to our partner is not actually what we want in a healthy relationship. It's interdependence. So I actually need you. I am emotionally attaching to you. So when that bond is taken away, there's of course going to be grief that arises in that experience of loss. And we want to allow ourselves to fully be with that and let waves of grief arise. There's many ways we can process grief. Writing is a beautiful way to allow it to come out, allowing our emotion to move through us, listening to music that attunes with our grief, being in nature. Nature can hold grief, can hold dysregulation for us in a powerful way. And what I really want you to know is grieving a relationship does not mean we are erasing what happened. That relationship, I think about it like composting. We are taking this thing that had a full life cycle and was fully experienced and had a life of its own, and we're allowing it to compost back into the soil, and it makes the soil rich so that something new can grow from it. So if I, take the orange peel that I ate, this orange that nourished me, and I put the orange peel in my compost, that orange peel is going to become that soil where a new thing can sprout. So every relationship that you are in that ends, it is not erased. That becomes the beautiful soil of something new to grow. And I think of that for myself. If I didn't have the marriage that I had, I really wouldn't be who I am today. It supported me in so many ways to become who I am. And it was the absolute right thing for that to transition and be composted into the new version of me. I grew so much inside of that. And from that place was able to step into a beautiful relationship that matches where I am on my journey. And so I just want you to know that that process is possible for all of us. Endings most certainly aren't failures. And when we are able to grieve, something new is able to arrive. Enjoying what you've heard so far and want to go deeper into somatic healing? I have a free workbook called How to Gain Control Over How You Feel, and it will help you to get in the driver's seat of your experience and step towards your desires with more ease. Check the show notes below for a link to download. So let's get to the questions that we have for today's episode.
Hi, Sarah. I'd like to just start off by saying thank you so much to you, Rachel, and your entire team for everything you guys are doing. About a month ago, I lost a relationship I did not want to lose. It has been incredibly difficult, but your show has really helped me, and I can honestly say it saved me. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. My question to you is, I was wondering how you would suggest one begin their healing journey when they don't feel they have the tools of regulation at their disposal. They don't know what their purpose even is. And in my case, they're in the same environment that initially caused their trauma, can't actually get out. So wondering what advice you would have to someone like me to start. Thank you.
I am holding you deeply in your experience that you're currently in. And for anyone listening who you didn't submit this question, but you're at a place in your life, a juncture where maybe you were blindsided by a loss of any kind, a loss of relationship, a loss of a loved one who is no longer on this earth, a loss of a company, whatever it might be. I know how overwhelming that experience is personally in my life. And so I just want you to know you're not alone, that this is a place you can always come and count on for support. I also want you to know that the communities, the programs that we create, we don't just create them to, certainly not to sell you something or just to give you the tools that you need to heal, but to give you a landing place. We all need that. When we're experiencing grief, it is so important that we surround ourselves with safe others who can cocoon us in our experience. So then for anyone listening, just know that all the programs that I have for you are places that you can come and seek refuge as you're processing. We'll share some of those links in the show notes, but even if you don't join, come on our email list or come check out our Instagram. Keep listening to these episodes because we'll continue to create a space that is safe for you. And we cannot grieve in isolation. Grieving is meant to happen in community. When we don't have a safe container around us to actually let go and in many ways fall apart, when we don't have that, our nervous system says, we can't process this and it gets stuck and trapped inside of us. And old grief can live inside of us for decades. When I'm working with people, sometimes grief arises and tears may be shed that are 30 years old. Like literally, that's not figurative. Literally, those tears are emotions that haven't been able to be felt. So I just want to name that is so incredibly important to find safe containers, safe relational experiences where we can process what's arising. Another thing that's really helpful is connecting into other safe, competent protectors or safe others that are not just our adult selves. So this person's saying they're struggling with regulating. That also tells me you might be struggling to get your adult self present. So bringing in other people that register as safe for us. So that might be a school teacher, from 40 years ago. It might be that friend that's no longer in your life. It might be a colleague in the past. It might be a grandparent that's no longer on this earth. It might be God, the universe. Bring those experiences and those people around you in the felt sense and just feel their presence of support. Another really important thing to do is anchoring in my adult self as much as I possibly can. So thinking of a time, just like we did in this episode, where you're capable and able, anchor in that adult self. And then I want you to connect to who is the young part that's hurting. They need us desperately. Connect to that part and comfort them, literally just like you would another child. Take their hand, hold them, feel the support of those safe others around you. Feel the support of safe community, actual people that you're with. And from that place, we're able to create the safety for that younger part that they need. So it's comforting the younger self, and then it's having the support to comfort adult us. And feeling into the depths of grief that is processing through us and not rushing that. And also remembering that the size of the love always matches the size of the grief. So great love means great grief, and honoring that fully and not trying to bypass that process. Lastly, if we are in an environment that is an environment that has caused trauma, it's really important that we also find safe experiences and safe environments to as a refuge. For me as a child, my only safe place was going into nature, and that became a refuge for me. Whenever I went into nature, I could safely be myself and feel fully. And so I really invite you to think about that. Where are the experiences of safety, and can I anchor in them? And also remembering that something ending is not a failure. What did I learn from this? How am I growing from this? And that makes room for what can be. So let's get to the next question we have today.
Hi, Sarah. So my relationship of 20 years ended very, very badly in September 2023. There was a lot of lying, a lot of betrayal, a lot of going behind my back, making sure that the new woman would take him before ending things with me. He actually never ended things with me. He told his great aunt, who told his brother, who told me or asked me. And he only moved down one street. He still seems to be everywhere. Everything is connected to him. 20 years along, we spent every minute together, basically. And I just can't seem to be able to move on, to start a new life. And I really want to. And there's still so much anger, and so much pain, and so much sadness, and I feel really, really stuck, and everything I try just doesn't work.
I am so sorry for the loss you experienced, and most importantly, for the betrayal that it sounds like you experienced inside that relationship. And so a few really important things. Number one, it is absolutely paramount that we process the appropriate healthy aggression to what occurred. And appropriate healthy aggression means the appropriate response to whatever happened. So if someone of 20 years, the way that they ended this relational container is by not even telling us, and they lied to us and they betrayed us, it is appropriate to have anger and perhaps even rage about that. We cannot move on unless that healthy aggression is processed in our bodies. That's not something you can think your way out of. So what we want to do is feel into the sensations and the feelings around that healthy aggression in your body in a titrated way. That means a little bit at a time. So it might be recalling one moment or a particular situation and allowing yourself to feel the affect of that in your body, and then asking that energy, what does it want to do in that moment? Healthy aggression is always going to want to mobilize. So it might be that I want to make a sound. I want to growl. Like literally, that's a part of processing healthy aggression. We can have growling come up. We might notice that our hands become like talons. I want to squeeze something. I want to break something. I want to push something. allow my system to move the energy through my body. And as that discharges, we rest and allow our system to come into regulation. Think of it like if you have a gallon jug of this healthy aggression, it needs to slowly be dumped out. So we feel a little bit at a time, process it through, a little bit at a time, process it through. And eventually what's going to happen is the jug's empty. And from that place, I no longer have this energetic connection to this person anymore. And I can actually move on from the experience. If I have not processed that, it's not possible. The other thing that's very important is to connect to that younger part of you that is perhaps showing up and saying, I've lost my home. And the more, or my person, my parent. So the more that you can comfort that young part and remind them, I am here with you, the more they're going to feel safe. And lastly, from adult you, I really want you to see from a lens of clarity who this person was. So feeling into what were the good things about them? What were the things that very clearly were not safe and did not work? And feel into those from adult you. From adult you, you're going to have a lens of clarity. And of course, and it sounds like you're saying this, in this situation, this person could not be the partner that you needed. And from doing all of this work, we're really able to compost that relationship through the process of grief, and something new can come. Let's get to the last question we have today.
Hi, Sarah. So I have a relationship question. I have taken your course, and I am aware of the patterns that I have as more anxious attachment. And I have currently found myself in a relationship that's lasted about 8 months now. And I've tried ending it multiple times over the last few months. And every time I go to have the conversation, I completely freeze and shut down. I start crying, or I just can't say the words yes, this is it. I've tried in person, I've tried over the phone. And so I know I have a more anxious attachment, but I also know that this relationship isn't good for me. So any advice on how to take the next step to actually end it, I would appreciate that.
So this is an indicator that you have a younger part or parts that are showing up every single time that you try to bring the relationship to a close. And so adult you might know, yeah, this isn't right for me and I need something different. But remember, to that younger part, if the younger part is showing up and they don't have your support, leaving will feel like dying to them. Or a younger part might feel like, if I do this, I'm going to harm them. And if I harm them, something bad's going to happen to me. Or I would rather die than hurt another person. So what I want you to do is anchor an adult you and get to know this younger part. I want you to ask the younger part, what are they afraid will happen if you end the relationship? So this is the vulnerable part I want you to connect with. And then what I want you to do is I want you to connect to the protector you. The protector you is the part that cries or shuts down. And thank that part for protecting the vulnerable part. That part has been doing their job for probably a very long time. And the more that you befriend that protector and thank them for what they've done and let them know you are here now. You are here now to protect the vulnerable part and ensure that they have you always, meaning they're going to be safe in the world. They're going to be protected by you. They're going to be heard and attuned with by you. And when you do parts work with both of those parts, what occurs is they actually begin to trust that you can take care of them. And that means that they also trust that your decision to leave this relationship is going to lead you in the right direction. And they know, they will always have you. The result of that is adult you will actually be able to step out of this relationship if it isn't right for you. So thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. I want to remind you that whatever your truest, most adult self is feeling guided to is always the right path. And the only thing we ever need to know is the next right step. Enjoying this episode and want to go even deeper into somatic healing? You can join my email community for weekly teachings, tools, and live events. Click the show notes to join.